Why do so many seniors fall into 8 silent traps that quietly shorten life? At first they seem harmless, but in truth they slowly steal strength from the body and peace from the mind. The good news is, once you recognize these traps, you can avoid them and protect both your health and your independence. In today's video, we'll uncover each of these hidden dangers and show you how to stay clear of them so you can keep living with vitality and purpose. Before we dive in, let us know in the comments where you're watching from, and stay with us until the very end to learn all 8 traps. Number 1. Medication overload and fragmented care. One of the most underestimated dangers facing people after age 75 is not a new disease, but the accumulation of medications. What begins as one prescription for blood pressure, another for sleep, and a third for joint pain often expands into a list of 10 or more. Each pill was once prescribed for a valid reason, but when they are taken together, the consequences can be unpredictable. Researchers from Johns Hopkins University have shown that nearly 2/3 of Americans over 65 take 5 or more prescription medications daily, and almost 1 in 5 take 10 or more. This phenomenon, called polypharmacy, is not just an abstract term. It is strongly associated with dizziness, confusion, sudden drops in blood pressure, constipation, and an increased risk of falls, which remain one of the leading causes of injury and loss of independence in older adults. The hidden danger lies in how these medications are managed. In a fragmented healthcare system, one specialist prescribes a heart pill, another adds something for nerves, and a primary care physician adjusts blood pressure medication without always knowing what the others have done. Add in over-the-counter remedies, herbal supplements, and vitamins purchased at the local pharmacy or grocery store, and the total burden becomes overwhelming. The body of a 75-year-old metabolizes medicine differently than it did at 55. The liver and kidneys work more slowly, and the nervous system is more sensitive to chemical changes. A dose that once caused no harm can suddenly become excessive. Consider the story of a retired teacher in Ohio. At age 77, she was still walking every morning and volunteering twice a week. Over the course of several years, her medication list grew from 3 items to 11. She began to complain of fatigue, foggy memory, and unsteady balance. Her family assumed this was simply old age. When a pharmacist reviewed her full list during a brown bag checkup, they discovered that 4 of the medicines interacted with each other to lower her blood pressure too much, and 2 others amplified her risk of confusion. With careful coordination between her doctors, her list was trimmed to 6 essential medications. Within weeks, her clarity returned, her gait steadied, and she felt like herself again. Her decline had not been inevitable aging, but a silent overload that was corrected once it was identified. The science behind this is clear. Studies published in the Journal of the American Geriatrics Society reveal that reducing unnecessary medications can cut fall risk by nearly 20% and lower hospital admissions by 15% in older adults. The evidence is strong that simplification is not about neglecting care, but about refining it. Every medication should serve a purpose that is still relevant today, not a purpose from 10 years ago that no longer applies. The positive message here is that safety and longevity can often be protected with an action as simple as reviewing what is already in the medicine cabinet. This does not require expensive technology or a new breakthrough drug. It requires awareness, conversation, and consistency. The practical step is straightforward. At least twice a year, gather every bottle, every supplement, every over-the-counter pill, and place them in a paper bag. Take them to one trusted health professional, ideally a primary care physician or pharmacist, and ask 2 direct questions. Which of these are still necessary, and which of these can be reduced or stopped? Use one pharmacy whenever possible so that interactions are flagged quickly, and keep a printed medication list updated in a wallet or purse in case of emergencies. The body at 75 still has remarkable resilience, but it thrives best when freed from unnecessary chemical burdens. The lesson is not that medicine is harmful, but that too much medicine without coordination quietly undermines the very health it was meant to protect. The safest path is not more, but better. The call to action is clear. Schedule a medication review within the next month, simplify where possible, and remember that clarity of mind and stability of body are not lost causes. They are waiting just beneath the weight of excess prescriptions, ready to return once the load is lightened. Number 2. The silent sensory drain. What happens when the world begins to fade? Not all at once, but in small, almost invisible ways. At age 75, many people no longer see as clearly in dim light or hear as sharply in crowded rooms, yet they dismiss it as just part of aging. The truth is that even mild hearing or vision loss can drain the brain of energy and vitality. Every time the ears miss a word or the eyes strain to see a step, the brain works overtime to fill in the gaps. This hidden effort is exhausting, leaving less energy for memory, focus, balance, and social connection. Scientific studies confirm what many families have noticed. Research from the Lancet Commission on Dementia Prevention, Intervention, and Care identifies untreated hearing loss as one of the most significant modifiable risk factors for cognitive decline. Older adults with untreated hearing loss are up to 5 times more likely to develop dementia. Vision impairment tells a similar story. Data from the National Eye Institute show that poor vision doubles the risk of falls and fractures among adults over 70. These are not minor inconveniences, they are direct threats to independence and longevity. The emotional toll is just as powerful. When hearing fades, conversations at family dinners become frustrating. When vision dims, evening walks feel unsafe. Over time, many quietly retreat from social life. This withdrawal often looks like slowing down with age, but in reality, it is the brain and body being starved of stimulation. Human beings are wired for interaction, and when senses fail to deliver that interaction clearly, isolation and sadness step in. A real story brings this to life. In New England, a retired librarian stopped attending her weekly book club at age 76. She told friends she was just tired, but the truth was that she could no longer follow discussions in noisy rooms. She sat in silence, embarrassed, pretending to understand. When her daughter encouraged a hearing test, she reluctantly agreed. Within weeks of using modern hearing aids, she rejoined her group with energy and confidence. She described the change not as hearing better, but as getting my life back. The science explained it. Her brain no longer had to work so hard to decode every sound, leaving her free to think, remember, and engage. The hopeful news is that these problems are preventable and manageable. Lighting in the home can be improved with warm, bright bulbs, nightlights in hallways, and high-contrast tape on stairs. Routine hearing and vision checks should be treated as essential as blood pressure checks. Captions on television programs, clear eyeglass prescriptions, and assistive devices are not signs of weakness, but tools of independence. Even simple steps like asking visitors to face forward when speaking or turning down background music can make communication smoother. The lesson is that protecting the senses is not about vanity. It is about survival, safety, and joy. Seeing clearly means noticing the grandchild's smile. Hearing clearly means laughing at the neighbor's joke. These are the threads that stitch days together with meaning. Ignoring declining senses is a slow surrender. Addressing them is a declaration that life is still meant to be lived fully. The call to action is simple and urgent. Schedule both a hearing test and an eye exam within the next year, even if there are no major complaints. Walk through the home in the evening and notice where light feels dim or where shadows hide hazards, then make adjustments. Every improvement returns energy to the brain, reduces risk of falls, and restores confidence in daily life. The body at 75 still responds with strength when given clarity. The world does not have to fade. It can remain bright, audible, and full of connection if the right steps are taken now. Number 3. Identity shrinkage after retirement. In Detroit, a man who once owned a busy auto shop still rises at 6 o'clock a.m., his body clock unchanged after decades of hard work. For years, his mornings were filled with the scent of oil, the sound of tools, and neighbors dropping by for advice. After retirement, the shop closed, and with it, his daily rhythm vanished. The same hour of dawn that once marked energy now greets him with silence. 1,000 miles away in Alabama, a retired teacher of the same age greets the morning differently. Though she no longer prepares lesson plans, every afternoon at 4 o'clock p.m., she invites neighborhood children onto her porch to read aloud. One life feels unnecessary, the other alive. Both are retired, yet one has preserved purpose while the other has watched it shrink away. This contrast illustrates one of the quietest but most powerful risks after 75, identity erosion. In American culture, identity is deeply tied to work. For decades, the question, "What do you do?" shapes introductions, confidence, and social standing. When that answer changes from, "I fix cars," or "I teach children," to "I am retired," many older adults quietly slide into the belief that they simply exist rather than contribute. That subtle shift steals motivation, dulls appetite, and weakens resilience. The science affirms what stories reveal. A landmark study from Rush University Medical Center followed more than 1,000 older adults and found that those with a strong sense of daily purpose were nearly 50% less likely to die during the follow-up period than those who felt adrift. Neurobiology explains why. Purpose stimulates the release of dopamine, a neurotransmitter linked to reward, motivation, and energy. It also reduces cortisol, the stress hormone that accelerates inflammation and weakens immunity. Functional MRI studies even show greater brain connectivity in individuals who report strong life purpose, suggesting that meaning quite literally strengthens the brain's wiring. Without it, the body interprets existence as a task already winding down, and vital systems begin to disengage. The emotional costs are visible. Without something to look forward to, days blur. Meals lose flavor when not followed by meaningful action. Movement declines because there is nowhere worth going. In contrast, when purpose is present, energy rises. Joints may ache, but they move. Memory sharpens because there is a reason to remember. The heart beats not only to survive, but because it is needed. History and culture across the United States provide countless illustrations. Veterans who volunteer at local schools to mentor young people carry the pride of service into a new mission. Grandmothers in immigrant communities keep cultural traditions alive by teaching recipes to the next generation. Retired farmers in the Midwest gather at diners each morning, not only for coffee but to trade advice about crops, sustaining a sense of belonging and expertise. These acts may look ordinary, but they are lifelines that prevent identity from shrinking. Purpose does not need grandeur. It may be tending a garden that brightens a street, writing postcards to old friends, knitting blankets for newborns at a hospital, or preparing soup for a shelter. Even waving at children walking home from school each afternoon gives structure and continuity. These are not hobbies in the shallow sense. They are affirmations of relevance. The call to action is practical. Create a purpose journal. Each Sunday evening, write down 3 meaningful actions for the coming week. They may be small. Call a neighbor on Wednesday, bring a flower to a friend on Friday, or attend a community meeting on Saturday. Treat these commitments with the same seriousness as a medical appointment. The consistency is what matters, not the scale. At 75, the body still listens closely to the mind. When the mind believes nothing is left to offer, the body begins to retreat. When the mind feels needed and engaged, the body responds with vitality. The lesson is clear. Retirement ends a career, not a calling. Identity does not fade unless it is abandoned. With even the smallest threads of purpose woven daily into the fabric of life, vitality endures. and the later chapters of life can remain bright, relevant, and deeply human. Number 4. Emotional weight and unspoken grief. More than 70% of adults over age 75 in the United States report having lost a spouse, a sibling, or a close lifelong friend. For many, the losses accumulate across decades, leaving not just memories but invisible scars. While society often assumes grief fades with time, science shows that unprocessed sorrow does not vanish. It takes root in the body. Researchers at Columbia University have documented that bereavement can double the risk of depression in older adults, and studies from the University of Pittsburgh demonstrate that long-term grief is linked to higher levels of inflammatory markers in the blood, weakening the immune system and raising vulnerability to illness. The physical impact of unexpressed emotions can be subtle at first. Shoulders carry a permanent tension, breathing becomes shallow, sleep turns restless. Appetite wanes not from lack of food but from lack of desire. Over time, these patterns compound into fatigue, isolation, and increased risk of cardiovascular disease. The widowhood effect, studied across multiple American cohorts, reveals that the risk of death for a surviving spouse rises sharply in the first year after a partner's death, not solely from sadness, but from the body's physiological collapse under grief. Yet statistics only tell part of the story. Consider George, 86, who lost his wife after 60 years together. He insisted he was fine and rarely spoke about her absence. Within months, he stopped attending his senior center, lost weight, and suffered sleepless nights. His decline was not driven by disease, but by sorrow trapped in silence. Contrast that with Eleanor, 80, who lost her sister around the same time. Instead of burying her grief, she joined a church support group where she shared stories each week and allowed herself to cry openly. Her health stabilized, her sleep improved, and she continued gardening and volunteering at her library. Both endured loss, but only one gave grief a safe place to breathe. Modern neuroscience explains this difference. When emotions are suppressed, the amygdala, an area of the brain that processes fear and sadness, remains overactive, keeping the nervous system in constant tension. Cortisol levels remain high, impairing memory and immunity. When grief is expressed through talking, journaling, prayer, or support groups, the prefrontal cortex helps regulate those emotions, cortisol decreases, and the body returns to balance. In other words, expression is healing. Silence prolongs harm. The encouraging truth is that releasing emotions is not weakness, but resilience. Safe outlets can take many forms: speaking with a trusted friend, writing in a notebook for 10 minutes each evening, attending a grief support circle, or engaging in rituals of remembrance, such as lighting a candle or creating a memory book with photographs. Even a short walk outdoors after sharing feelings has been shown to lower stress hormones and lift mood. These practices provide both comfort and physiological protection. The call to action is to stop treating grief as something to get over and instead treat it as something to carry wisely. Choose one outlet this week, however small, and commit to it. Tell a family member, "I miss her." Write a single page about a memory. Attend one community gathering where stories can be shared without judgment. By allowing the heart to breathe, the body follows with renewed strength. At 75 and beyond, grief is inevitable, but decline is not. Loss may visit, but vitality remains possible when emotions are honored rather than hidden. The lesson is clear. What is spoken can be transformed. What is buried festers. Healing begins not by denying the sorrow, but by giving it room, and in that space life continues with surprising resilience. Number 5. The quiet erosion of daily purpose. Maya Angelou once said, "Nothing will work unless you do." At age 75 and beyond, the truth of her words becomes more vivid than ever. The body and mind are not kept alive by chance alone, but by having a reason to rise each morning. What often shortens life after 75 is not only illness or frailty, but the gradual disappearance of daily purpose, the kind that anchors the hours and gives shape to time. In the absence of purpose, days can flatten into a blur. Breakfast feels like a routine without anticipation of what comes next. The afternoon drifts into television or silence, and evenings close without reflection. Slowly, the body interprets this lack of engagement as a signal that it is no longer needed. Appetite fades, movement slows, and the intricate systems that once kept energy high begin to retreat. Scientists at the University of Michigan found that older adults with a clear sense of purpose were less likely to develop functional disabilities and had a significantly lower risk of death over a 14-year follow-up. The conclusion was striking. Purpose does not only enrich life, it prolongs it. The difference can be seen in everyday lives. Ruth, 88, who was not wealthy and faced arthritis, still radiated vitality. Every Monday, she wrote postcards to homebound members of her church. Every Thursday, she cooked soup and froze it for a shelter. Every afternoon, she sat by her window at 4 p.m. to wave at children returning from school, learning their names and encouraging them. None of these actions was grand, yet they created structure, community, and meaning. In contrast, another woman of the same age who abandoned her weekly bridge game after friends passed away began to stay home without purpose. Within a year, she felt weaker, lonelier, and more withdrawn. Purpose, or the lack of it, marked the divide. Neuroscience explains why. Purpose activates the brain's reward circuits, releasing dopamine and endorphins that elevate mood and sharpen attention. It lowers stress hormones, steadies blood pressure, and even strengthens immune function. The human body thrives on relevance. When there is a reason to keep going, the body aligns itself with that belief. When there is none, the body quietly slows. The good news is that purpose does not need to be monumental. It can be tending a tomato plant on the back porch, calling a grandchild every Sunday afternoon, organizing hymnals at church, or reading aloud at a library. It can even be a private ritual such as writing 3 things to be grateful for each night. What matters most is consistency. Purpose is like a thread. Woven daily, it becomes a lifeline. The call to action is to identify one daily or weekly role that feels authentic and necessary. Write it on a calendar and treat it with the same respect as a medical appointment. Begin with something manageable, such as feeding the birds each morning, walking a neighbor's dog twice a week, or volunteering one afternoon a month. These small anchors accumulate, restoring rhythm to the days and signaling to the body that it is still deeply needed. At 75, the measure of life is not only the number of years lived, but the meaning carried within them. When daily purpose is honored, vitality lingers, memory sharpens, and the heart beats not just to survive, but to belong. The lesson is unmistakable. Purpose, however modest, is fuel, and with it the later chapters of life can remain full of relevance, dignity, and joy. Number 6. The home and environment mismatch. At age 75, the walls of a familiar home can feel like a fortress of safety, but in truth, they often hide invisible traps. A rug that once decorated the hallway becomes a slippery hazard. A bathtub that felt comforting in middle age turns into a place of danger with its slick porcelain. A single step at the porch that was nothing at 50 can become the reason for hesitation or even a fall at 75. Every year in the United States, more than 3 million older adults are treated in emergency rooms for fall-related injuries, and over half of these accidents occur in the home. The irony is clear. The very space meant to protect often becomes the riskiest environment of all. The mismatch between the body and the home develops slowly. When houses were bought or built, stairs were seen as exercise, deep bathtubs as luxury, and throw rugs as decoration. But as balance, vision, and muscle strength change, those same features turn against their residents. The National Council on Aging warns that 1 out of 4 adults over 65 falls each year, and falls remain the leading cause of injury-related death in older Americans. Yet most of these falls are preventable with simple adjustments. Consider Margaret, 77, who had lived in her family home in Ohio for nearly 50 years. She loved her patterned rugs and antique coffee tables, but after 2 close calls tripping over them, she reluctantly agreed to a home safety evaluation. With her daughter's help, the rugs were replaced with non-slip mats, nightlights were installed in the hallway, and a grab bar was added to the bathroom. Within weeks, Margaret felt more confident walking from room to room. Her independence was not taken away. It was protected by reimagining the space around her. This lesson is not limited to the house itself. The surrounding environment also plays a powerful role. Icy sidewalks in Minnesota, steep porches in Kentucky, or intense summer heat in Arizona, each demand specific strategies. Shoes with strong grip, handrails at entryways, shaded seating areas, and even community-driven buddy systems for extreme weather days can transform danger into resilience. An older neighbor in Florida once told me that the best change she made at 78 was not a new medication, but a neighbor's check-in call every afternoon at 4:00 p.m. That simple system meant she was never left unseen. The science backs these stories. Environmental modifications, such as grab bars, stair railings, improved lighting, and clutter removal, have been shown to reduce fall risk by up to 40% in older adults. Researchers emphasize that prevention is not about removing independence, but extending it. Every adjustment to the environment signals to the body that it is safe to move, safe to stretch, safe to keep living actively. The call to action is direct. Dedicate 1 hour this week to a home and environment audit. Walk through every room in the evening when shadows fall and notice where light feels dim. Test each rug and remove any that slip underfoot. Place a flashlight beside the bed and keep essential items at waist height to avoid dangerous reaching. In the bathroom, add a non-slip mat inside the tub and install at least 1 grab bar. Outside, clear walkways of clutter and ensure stairs are well lit. Invite a family member or friend to help, because 2 sets of eyes will see more than one. At 75, safety does not mean giving up freedom. It means reshaping the environment so that the home becomes a partner, not a threat. The lesson is simple yet profound. The body can only thrive when it feels secure in its own space. By adapting the home and preparing for the realities of the environment, life after 75 can remain not only longer, but steadier, brighter, and full of confidence. Number 7. The hidden cost of emotional silence. Grief can break your heart, literally. This startling truth is not a metaphor, but a medical fact. Cardiologists at Harvard have documented a phenomenon called broken heart syndrome, where intense emotional pain can weaken the heart muscle so severely that it mimics a heart attack. At age 75 and beyond, when the body's reserves are already more fragile, carrying grief in silence is not only heavy on the spirit, it is dangerous to health itself. By this stage of life, almost everyone has endured significant loss: a spouse, a sibling, lifelong friends, sometimes even a child. The outside world may offer sympathy for a moment, but often it expects resilience, as though years of experience should make sorrow easier. In reality, grief does not lessen with age, it deepens. When sadness is hidden rather than expressed, it weaves itself into the body. Blood pressure rises, immunity weakens, inflammation spreads, and sleep becomes restless. Studies from Columbia University show that prolonged, unprocessed grief can double the risk of depression in older adults, while researchers at the University of Pittsburgh found higher levels of inflammatory proteins in the blood of those who suppress their emotions compared to those who openly share them. The tragedy is that this erosion happens quietly. Outwardly, the person may smile and say, "I'm fine." Inwardly, tension builds like an unseen weight. Shoulders stiffen, breathing shortens, and joy fades. It is easy for families to mistake this as inevitable aging when, in truth, it is sorrow asking for release. Yet healing is possible when emotions are honored. George, 86, lost his wife of 60 years and at first tried to remain stoic. Within months he lost weight, withdrew from friends, and barely slept. In contrast, Eleanor, 80, who lost her sister around the same time, began attending a small grief circle at her church. She spoke haltingly at first, then with more ease. She cried, laughed at old memories, and allowed herself to feel fully. Over time, her appetite returned, her energy lifted, and her health stabilized. Both endured loss, but only one allowed grief to breathe. Neuroscience helps explain why. Suppressed grief keeps the amygdala in constant alarm, flooding the body with cortisol. Expressed grief, by contrast, activates the prefrontal cortex, which helps regulate emotions, lower stress hormones, and restore balance to the nervous system. In other words, tears and words are not weakness, but medicine. The path forward is not complicated. It begins with permission to acknowledge the weight. That can mean writing in a notebook for 10 minutes each evening, telling a trusted friend, lighting a candle for a loved one, or attending a support group where stories are shared without judgment. Even walking outside while speaking memories aloud has been shown to reduce stress. Each act is a release, and every release lightens the body as much as the heart. The call to action is simple and urgent. Choose one outlet for expression this week. Speak one sentence of truth. I miss him. I feel lonely. Or, I am still angry. Write down one memory and place it in a box or a book. By allowing grief to move, health follows. At 75, sorrow cannot be erased, but it can be transformed into connection, wisdom, and resilience. The lesson is clear. Silence is not strength, and stoicism is not safety. What is unspoken festers. What is expressed heals. The body and heart remain stronger, not weaker, when feelings are honored. Even after loss, vitality is possible when the weight of grief is no longer carried alone. Number 8. The quiet decline of movement. Imagine a 75-year-old who once walked every evening around the neighborhood. One rainy night, there is a slip on the sidewalk. Not a fall, no broken bones, only a scare. From that day forward, evening walks feel risky. Better to stay safe, the thought goes. Days pass, then weeks, until the daily mile becomes a daily chair. Muscles soften, balance weakens, and within 6 months, climbing stairs feels like climbing a mountain. What began as caution quietly became decline. This is one of the most overlooked threats after 75, the slow disappearance of regular movement. The danger is not only physical weakness, but the way the body forgets how to move. Unlike a machine that preserves itself by resting, the human body is more like a garden that withers without tending. Studies from the National Institute on Aging show that adults who engage in strength and balance exercises at least twice a week reduce their risk of serious falls by nearly 30%. Conversely, even 2 weeks of near total inactivity in older adults can trigger measurable muscle loss. The cost is not just strength. When movement fades, blood flow slows, memory dulls, digestion stalls, and mood declines. Researchers at the University of British Columbia discovered that regular aerobic activity can actually increase hippocampal volume, the part of the brain linked to memory, even in adults over 70. In other words, movement is not only about preventing falls, it is about keeping the brain alive. The emotional impact is equally powerful. A walk to the mailbox brings a wave from a neighbor. A trip to the store offers small conversations that brighten the day. These interactions vanish when movement stops, deepening isolation. What feels like safety becomes, ironically, a prison. The hopeful news is that safe movement is always possible, even with limitations. Simple chair rises, standing up and sitting down 10 times, strengthen the legs and core. Heel-to-toe walking along a kitchen counter improves balance. A short walk of 10 minutes around the block, or even pacing slowly indoors on icy days, preserves rhythm. Using a cane or walker is not failure. It is a tool that extends independence. Comfortable shoes with solid grip and handrails in key spots make movement more secure. The story of Walter, 82, illustrates this truth. After a near fall, he stopped his evening walks. Within months, he felt weak and discouraged. With encouragement from his doctor and daughter, he began a simple routine. Chair rises each morning, a 5-minute walk to the mailbox after lunch, and stretching while holding the kitchen counter in the evening. Gradually, his legs regained strength, his balance improved, and his confidence returned. What changed his life was not avoiding risk, but reintroducing movement with wisdom. The call to action is to ask a direct question. Am I truly unable to move, or am I simply afraid? If the answer is fear, it is time to create a plan that respects caution but rejects stagnation. Begin with 10 minutes of safe, supported activity each day. Build slowly, celebrate consistency, and remember that every step signals to the body, I am still needed. At 75, survival is not only about avoiding harm, but about continuing to move with intention. The lesson is clear. Stillness may feel safe, but it silently shortens life. Motion, even careful motion, keeps muscles strong, the brain alert, and the spirit connected. The body thrives not by retreating, but by remembering how to walk forward. Dear friend, aging after 75 does not have to mean decline. It means paying attention to the small traps that quietly steal strength. The truth is, most seniors don't fall because of one big illness, but because of slow habits that pile up. Too many medications without review can blur the mind and weaken balance. Hearing and vision loss, if ignored, drain the brain and push people into isolation. Letting purpose fade after retirement or burying grief in silence slowly erodes both body and spirit. Even the home, once a safe place, can turn into a hazard. And when movement stops, the body forgets how to move. The core lesson is simple. Your body and mind still respond to care. Science proves it. A medication review can bring back clarity. Correcting mild hearing or vision loss restores energy. Purposeful routines, reading to grandchildren, volunteering, or even a daily wave to a neighbor, light up the brain with motivation. Speaking grief out loud calms the nervous system. Safe home adjustments and daily movement protect independence. None of these require miracles. They require small, steady choices. Your mental health is the foundation. Loneliness and silence shorten life. Connection, gratitude, and purpose extend it. Each simple act, a short walk, an honest conversation, a brighter light bulb, a shared meal, is medicine for both body and soul. So the call is clear. Don't wait. Review your medicines, schedule a hearing and eye check, move a little every day, and give yourself a reason to wake up with purpose. These actions are not trivial. They are lifelines that keep you strong, alert, and alive. If this is your first time here, or if you haven't subscribed yet, please subscribe now so you never miss the next story that could change your health and your future. We would love to hear from you. Which lesson spoke to you most? Share your thoughts in the comments, because your story may inspire someone else today. Thank you for watching, and may your later years be filled with strength, peace, and joy.